Chapter 6. Amy in Trouble.
"Where are you going?"
Amy asked Meg and Jo one afternoon.
"I want to come too."
"You can't, dear. You're not invited," said Meg.
"You're going somewhere with Laurie. I know you are."
"Yes, we are," said Jo. "Now stop annoying us."
"You're going to the theater," Amy said suddenly. "I want to go with you."
"We could take her, I suppose," began Meg. "No, Laurie only invited us," said Jo.
"I shall go," shouted Amy. "Meg says I can."
"You just stay where you are," said Jo angrily.
"I'll make you sorry for this, Jo March,"
Amy shouted as Meg and Jo left the house. The two older sisters enjoyed themselves at the theater, but Jo couldn't stop worrying as she wondered what Amy would do to make her sorry. She found out the next afternoon. Beth, Amy, and Meg were sitting together when Jo ran into the room. "Has anyone taken my notebook?" Jo asked. Meg and Beth said no at once, but Amy said nothing. "Amy, you've got it," said Jo.
"No, I haven't,"
said Amy. "That's a lie," said Jo. "Tell me the truth or I'll make you."
"Do what you like," said Amy. "You'll never see your stupid book again because I burned it."
Jo's face went white.
"What? But I worked so hard writing my stories. I said I'd make you sorry, and I have," said Amy.
Jo jumped at Amy and shook her shoulders.
"You wicked, wicked girl," cried Jo. "I'll never, ever forgive you."
And she ran out of the room. Mrs. March came home and heard the story. "Oh, how could you do that, Amy?" she said. "That was Jo's book of stories. She wrote them all herself and was hoping to make them good enough to print." Slowly, Amy began to understand the terrible thing she had done and started to cry. Later, when Jo appeared for tea, Amy begged her sister to forgive her. "I shall never forgive you," Jo answered. It was not a happy evening, and when singing time came, Jo remained silent. Afterwards, she kissed her mother and said, "Good night." "My dear, don't go to bed feeling so angry with your sister," whispered Mrs. March. "I'm sorry, Mother. I can't forgive her," replied Jo. Next day, Jo wanted to get out of the house, so she picked up her skates and went next door to ask Laurie to take her skating. Amy heard them going.
"Jo promised to take me with her next time," she complained.
"It's hard for her to forgive you, Amy," said Meg.
"Go after them, and wait until Jo is enjoying herself, then give her a kiss, or do something kind."
It was not far to the river, but Jo and Laurie were already skating when Amy arrived. Jo saw Amy, but turned away. Laurie was carefully skating along the edge of the ice and didn't see the younger girl. Amy put her skates on and stood on the ice. "Keep near the edge. The ice isn't safe in the middle," Laurie called to Jo. Then he disappeared round the first bend in the river. Jo heard, but Amy did not. Jo realized that Amy probably hadn't heard, but she said nothing and skated after Laurie. Let Amy look after herself, Jo thought. Amy skated out towards the smoother ice in the middle of the river. Jo reached the bend, and for a moment she stood still, a strange feeling in her heart. Something made her turn round, just in time to see Amy throw up her hands and go crashing through the ice into the cold water. Amy gave a cry that made Jo's heart stop with fear. She tried to call Laurie, but her voice was gone, and for a second she could only stand and stare at the little blue hood of Amy's coat above the black water. Suddenly, Laurie skated past her and shouted, "Bring a piece of wood from the side of the river, quickly!" Wild with fear, Jo fetched some wood and pulled it across the ice, while Laurie held Amy's head above the water. Together, they got her out. She was more frightened than hurt, and was quickly taken home. They covered her in blankets and tried to calm her, and after a little while she fell asleep in front of the warm fire. Later, when everything was quiet, Jo asked her mother, "Are you sure she's safe?" "Quite safe, dear. It was sensible to get her home as quickly as you did." "Laurie did it all," said Jo. "Mother, if she should die, it will be my fault. I get angry so quickly. Oh, why can't I be more like you?" "I get angry nearly every day of my life, Jo," said Mrs. March. "But I've learned not to show it. I've learned to stop myself saying the angry words that come to my lips. And you must try to do the same, my dear." Amy moved in her sleep, and Jo looked at her. "I refuse to forgive her, and today she nearly died. And it was Laurie who saved her. How could I be so wicked?" Jo began to cry. Then Amy opened her eyes and held out her arms, with a smile that went straight to Jo's heart. Neither of them said a word, but they held each other close, and everything was forgiven and forgotten. Chapter 7. Meg Hears Some Gossip. Annie Moffat did not forget her promised invitation, and one April day Meg went to stay at the Moffats' large house. Meg thought it was wonderful. She loved riding in fine carriages, wearing her best dress every day, and doing nothing except enjoy herself. She soon began to talk about fashionable clothes and hairstyles in the way that the other girls did. And the more Meg saw of Annie's pretty things, the more she wished that she, too, was rich. Annie's older sisters, Belle and Clara, were fine young ladies. Mr. Moffat was a fat, friendly gentleman, and Mrs. Moffat was a fat, friendly lady. They were all very kind to Meg, and did their best to make her feel at home. When the evening for a small party came, Meg's best dress looked very old next to Sally's new one, but no one said anything about it. The girls were getting ready when a servant brought in a box of flowers. "For Miss March," she said. "And here's a letter." "What fun! Who are they from?" said the girls. "We didn't know you had a young man." The letter is from Mother, and the flowers are from Laurie, said Meg, simply. Oh, said Annie, with a strange look. Her mother's loving words and Laurie's kindness made Meg feel much happier, and she enjoyed the party very much. Annie made her sing, and someone said that Meg had a fine voice. So Meg was having a nice time, until she heard someone say, on the other side of a large table of flowers, "How old is the Lawrence boy?" 16 or 17, I think, said another voice. It would be an excellent thing for one of those girls, said a third voice. Sally says they are very friendly, and the old man thinks they are all wonderful. I expect Mrs. M. has made her plans, said Mrs. Moffat's voice. But do you think the girl knows of them? She told that little lie about her mother, and her cheeks went pink. I'm sure the note was from the boy, really. Oh, poor thing. She'd be very pretty if she had some nice clothes. Do you think she'll mind if we offer to lend her a dress for Thursday? I shall ask young Lawrence to come, and we'll have some fun with her afterwards. Meg tried to forget what she'd heard, but could not. The gossip made her angry, and she was glad when the party was over and she was alone in her bed. She cried quietly to herself. Why did people have to say those things? She and Laurie were just friends, but now that friendship felt damaged by the unkind gossip. The next day, Miss Bell said, Meg, dear, we've sent an invitation to your friend, Mr. Lawrence, for Thursday. Meg pretended to misunderstand. You're very kind, but I'm afraid he won't come. He's nearly 70. Miss Bell laughed. I mean the young man. There isn't one, said Meg. Laurie is only a boy. Isn't he about your age? Said Clara. Nearer Joe's, said Meg. I'm 17 in August. It's nice of him to send you flowers, said Annie. He often does, to all of us, said Meg. My mother and old Mr. Lawrence are friends, you know. What will you wear on Thursday? Asked Sally. My white dress again. I haven't got any others. No others? Said Sally. How funny. I have a pretty blue dress I can't wear any more, Meg, said Belle. It will please me if you wear it. You're very kind, but, began Meg. Please do, said Belle. You'll look quite beautiful in it. Meg couldn't refuse this kind offer, and, on the Thursday evening, Belle helped to change Meg into a fine lady. She brushed and curled her hair, reddened her lips, then helped her to get into the sky-blue dress. The neck of the dress was cut very low, and Meg was quite shocked when she saw herself in the mirror. A necklace and earrings were added, and Meg was ready for the party. At first, she felt strange in all the fine clothes, but she soon discovered that people who did not usually notice her now came to speak to her. Several young men who had only stared before now asked to be introduced. Suddenly, Meg saw Laurie across the room. He was staring at her, and he didn't look very pleased. Meg began to feel uncomfortable, and she wished that she had worn her old dress. As she walked up to Laurie, she saw Belle and Annie watching them both and smiling. "I'm glad you came," Meg said to Laurie in her most grown-up voice. "I was afraid you wouldn't." "Jo wanted me to come and tell her how you looked," said Laurie. "What will you tell her?" "I'll say I didn't know you, because you look so unlike yourself. I'm quite afraid of you," he said. "The girls dressed me up for fun," said Meg. "Don't you like it?" "No, I don't," came the cool reply. Meg became angry. "Then I shan't stay with you," and she walked off towards the window. A moment or two later, an older man went past her, and she heard him say to his friend, "That girl has been dressed up like a doll." "Oh, dear," thought Meg. "Why didn't I wear my own things?" She turned and saw Laurie behind her. "Please forgive me," he said. "Come and have something to eat." Meg tried to look annoyed. "Please come," he said again. "I don't like your dress, but I do think you are wonderful." Meg smiled and found it impossible to stay angry with him. "Please, don't tell them at home about my dress," she said. "They won't understand that it was just for fun, and it will worry Mother. I was stupid to wear it, but I'll tell them myself." "I won't say anything," he promised. He did not see her again until supper time, when she was drinking wine with 2 other boys. "You'll feel ill tomorrow if you drink much of that, Meg," Laurie whispered to her. "I'm not Meg tonight," she said. "I'm a doll who does crazy things. Tomorrow I'll be good again." Meg danced and laughed and talked to as many young men as she could manage, but went to bed feeling that she hadn't enjoyed herself as much as she had expected. She was sick all the next day, and on Saturday went home, quite tired of her fortnight's fun. "I'm glad to be home," she said to her mother and Jo, after telling them how she was dressed up like a doll, drank too much wine, and was ill afterwards. She had laughed while telling them the story, but her face still looked worried at the end. "There is something else, I think," said Mrs. March, smoothing Meg's cheek, which suddenly became rose-red. "Yes," Meg said slowly. "I hate people saying and thinking awful things about us and Laurie." Then she told them the gossip she had heard. "What rubbish," said Jo. "Just wait until I see Annie Moffat. How stupid to think that Mother has plans, and that we are kind to Laurie because he is rich and may marry one of us one day. He'll laugh when I tell him." "No, Jo," said her mother. "You must never repeat wicked gossip." "Do you have plans, Mother?" asked Meg. "All mothers do, dear," said Mrs. March. "But my plans are different from Mrs. Moffat's, I suspect. I want my daughters to be loved, and I want people to think well of them. I want them to marry well, but not to marry rich men just because they are rich. I'd rather you were poor men's wives, if that meant you had happy, peaceful lives. But your father and I believe that we'll always be proud of our daughters, whether they are married or single." You will, said Meg and Jo together. Chapter 8. All play and no work. The 1st of June, and the King family is going on holiday tomorrow, said Meg. I'm free for 3 months. And Aunt March went away for her holiday today, said Jo. Isn't life wonderful? What will you do all your holiday? Asked Amy. I'll stay in bed late and do nothing, said Meg. I have lots of books to read, said Jo. Let's not do any studying, Beth, said Amy. Let's play all the time and rest, as Jo and Meg are going to do. I will if Mother doesn't mind, said Beth. Mrs. March agreed to the plan and said they could try it for a week. But, she added, I think by Saturday night you will find that all play and no work is as bad as all work and no play. Next day, Meg appeared at 10 o'clock and ate breakfast alone. It was a lonely meal, and the room was untidy because Beth had not cleaned it. Jo went to the river with Laurie, then sat in the apple tree and read a book. Beth began to tidy things in her cupboard, but she got tired and left it half done. She went to her piano, glad that she did not have to wash the cups and plates. Amy sat in the garden to draw, hoping someone would see her and say something nice about her picture. But no one appeared, so she went for a walk, got caught in the rain, and came home very wet. At tea, everyone said that it had been a delightful but unusually long day. Meg, who had been shopping in the afternoon, now decided that she did not like the dress she had bought. Jo had a headache from reading too long. Beth couldn't find anything in her cupboard, and the rain had made Amy's dress so wet that she couldn't wear it to Katie Brown's party the next day. Mrs. March listened, smiled, and said nothing. The week seemed to get longer and longer with nothing much to do, and by Friday the girls were glad that it was nearly over. Then Mrs. March gave Hannah a holiday, and when the girls got up on Saturday, there was no breakfast ready, no fire in the kitchen, and no mother waiting for them. "What has happened?" said Jo. Meg ran upstairs, then came down to say that Mother was staying in her room to have a rest. "She says we must look after ourselves today," Meg said. "Good. I want something to do," said Jo. Secretly, they were all pleased to have something useful to do again. Beth and Amy put cups and plates on the table, while Jo and Meg got the breakfast. Then Meg took some tea and an egg up to Mrs. March. The tea was too strong, and the egg was burned. Mrs. March did not complain, but she laughed to herself afterwards. Jo decided to invite Laurie to dinner. "There's meat and vegetables and plenty of potatoes," she told Meg, "and we can have strawberries, and then coffee." Her mother said she did not mind at all because she was going out for dinner. Jo did her best, but the potatoes were still hard in the middle, the vegetables were cooked too long and fell to pieces, and the meat was burned black. The strawberries were not ready for eating, and she put salt on them instead of sugar. Unfortunately, this was not discovered until Laurie began eating them. He pretended everything was all right, but Amy took a spoonful and ran from the table. "What's wrong?" said Jo. Meg and Laurie told her. "Oh, no," said Jo. Then she saw Laurie start to smile, and she began to laugh. Soon, everyone was laughing with her. "What a terrible day," said Jo, after they had cleared everything away. Mrs. March returned home later. "Have you enjoyed your week of all play and no work, girls? Or do you want another week of it?" she said. "I don't," said Jo. "Nor do I," shouted the others. "Mother, did you go out and leave us just to see how we would manage?" asked Meg. "Yes," said Mrs. March. "I wanted you to see that being comfortable depends on us all helping each other, and not just thinking of ourselves. Isn't it better to have time for play and time for work, and to make each day useful and enjoyable?" "Oh, it is, Mother, it is," said the girls. Some days later, all 4 girls went on a picnic with Laurie and his tutor, Mr. Brooke, and some other young people. Sally Gardner and her English friend, Miss Kate Vaughan, were among them. It was a sunny day, and they had their picnic on a hill under some trees. After the meal, most of the young ladies and gentlemen played games, but Miss Kate sat under a tree and began to draw. Meg watched while Mr. Brooke lay on the grass beside her, with a book, which he did not read. "I wish I could draw," said Meg. "Why don't you learn?" replied Miss Kate. She was little older than the other girls, and was very much the fashionable young lady. "I haven't time," said Meg. "I have a job teaching 4 children in a family." "Oh," said Miss Kate, looking rather shocked. She said no more, but her face showed that she thought being a private teacher was little better than being a servant, and Meg's cheeks quickly became red. "In America, young ladies prefer to work and earn money for themselves," said Mr. Brooke quickly, "and not expect others to pay for everything." "I see," said Miss Kate, coldly. Soon after, she took her drawing and moved away. "There's no place like America for us workers, Miss Meg," said Mr. Brooke, smiling. His brown eyes looked at Meg warmly, and she smiled back at him. "I wish I liked teaching as much as you do," she said. "You would if you were teaching Laurie," said Mr. Brooke. "I'll be sorry when he goes to college next year, but then I shall become a soldier." "I think every young man wants to be a soldier," said Meg. "But it's hard for the family who stay at home." "I have no family, and not many friends to care if I live or die," said Mr. Brooke, sadly. "Laurie and his grandfather would care," said Meg, "and we would all be very sorry if anything happened to you." "Thank you," said Mr. Brooke, cheering up immediately.